I was excited to receive my grandfather's old camera, the Nikormat FTN. There's only one problem. I don't know how to use this damn thing. For the life of me, I can't figure out where the SD card goes. I thought this was a flippy screen, but apparently it's not. This camera from the 1970s has me completely perplexed. I had to do a lot of research just to find out how to open the camera and try to load film.
Oh, you see me struggling a little there to fit this in. It's not going to fit in unless I pull this little thing up here.
And I found out that the mercury battery that this camera takes has long since been banned. Besides using a disposable point-and-shoot camera back in my childhood, I am completely out of my element when it comes to film cameras. I feel like I've entered some sort of a time slip and I'm back in the 1970s, completely devoid of all of my technology. And I've often thought that some of the recent advancements in technology in the mirrorless cameras have been completely unnecessary. But trying to figure this camera out makes me feel stripped completely bare. This whole experience has made me question what camera technology could I absolutely live without. The first question I had to ask myself is, could I really deal without using a digital camera? I'm so used to being able to see the results of my work instantaneously on a nice LCD screen. Being limited to only 36 exposures that you have to go and develop seems completely crippling to me. Since I love to photograph fast-moving wildlife and my reflexes aren't the best, I definitely need all the help I can get with a digital camera. It really does blow my mind that when digital photography first became available, there were some people that said it wasn't real photography at all.
Real photographers don't use digital cameras was a huge one when digital cameras first came out.
I believe that's why DP Review, the website, is successful, because I was shooting film and then I got a digital camera and I tried to hang out in the same forums like photo.net. And at the time, people were real snarky with you if you were using a digital camera because they didn't think you were, and then DP Review came around and suddenly there was a home that would accept me.
Oh, that was your first home.
Well, when I switched to digital, because I got rejected by even though I had previously been shooting film. So this existed because the whole community had to be divided.
Wow, this snobbery has been around too long.
Since I'm pretty sure I need a digital camera, my other question was, do I really need a mirrorless camera? I often see DSLRs for such a cheap price on eBay. But first I need to figure out what a DSLR actually is. My grandfather's film camera says SLR. I need to figure out what all this means.
Now, in an old school DSLR, after the light passes through the lens, it hits a mirror inside the camera that bounces the light through a prism and into the viewfinder you use to frame the shot and focus. Now, in many modern cameras, only part of that light goes through the OVF, or optical viewfinder, while part of it hits a separate autofocus sensor. Now, when you want to take a picture, things get really interesting. You hit the shutter button, and that whole mirror assembly flips up. That's that distinctive taking a picture sound that DSLRs make. Light hits the camera's sensor or film directly, and the viewfinder blacks until the exposure is finished. Basically, you'll see approximately the exact same light level as you experience. So if it's dark, you'll have a dark viewfinder, and it can be difficult to set up a shot in dark situations. In a mirrorless camera, there's no mirror and no optical viewfinder. Instead, the light passes straight through the lens to the sensor, which handles autofocus and passes the digital image to either the electronic viewfinder or to the big screen. Since there's no mirror mechanism inside, the camera can be smaller and still deliver the same quality.
I'm not completely opposed to trying out a DSLR, but I do think the optical viewfinder versus an electronic viewfinder might be a deal breaker for me. Trying to look through this optical viewfinder on my grandfather's old SLR definitely feels limiting. If I ever do find a battery that I can use for this camera, at least it'll have a light meter. At least it'll have a red line to help me figure out if the exposure is somewhat correct.
Let's talk about the fundamentals of what an optical viewfinder is. With a DSLR, the light passes through the lens, hits a mirror, which then is reflected up through a prism, which then flips it around so that you can see it with your eye. That is an optical viewfinder. It tends to be sharp, it tends to be clear, because you are seeing the light as the camera is seeing it. Now on the flip side, a mirrorless camera with an electronic viewfinder doesn't let you look through the viewfinder to see exactly what the camera is seeing. optically, but you do get to see it digitally. The light comes in, it passes right through the lens onto the sensor, and then the electronic viewfinder shows you exactly what it's seeing, just like you're watching TV. With the optical viewfinder, you have only a certain amount of information at your fingertips, even though your fingertips are your eyes. So you only have a certain amount of information that your eyes will see in the viewfinder. You see your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO, how many frames are left. You see a light meter, and certain cameras can add more information now. But on the flip side, with the electronic viewfinder, you can see the same exact stuff, but you can change and see a lot more. You can see your histogram, you can see focus peaking, you can see zebra lines, you can see your audio levels. That's something you cannot see in the viewfinder with a DSLR and an optical viewfinder.
I do think for someone who's visually impaired like me, the electronic viewfinder might be the best way to go. I need as much information as I can get. I have to admit, I really don't use focus peaking very much because I stay away from manual focus as much as I can.
I have trouble manually focusing because my eyes just are not sharp.
I'm not sure if it's cheating to use autofocus as much as I do, but I completely rely on it.
So manual focus is clearly very useful, but I mainly see it as a solution to the problem. My personal preference is to use automatic focus, and if autofocus is struggling, that's when I pull manual focus out of the bag. Autofocus is the way I have my camera set up. I don't see it as cheating. It's another tool that we can use to enable us to capture the images we want. When I think back, there are images that I've taken in the past that I simply would not have got had I had to manually focus the lens. In my view, autofocus rocks.
I'm not so sure that I need the AI-assisted autofocus that's in the Sony a7 IV. I'm not completely convinced that I need phase detect autofocus, at least when it comes to photography. Videography is a different story. When I was using the old Lumix Micro Four Thirds cameras before they adopted phase detect autofocus, I was doing quite alright with their depth from defocus system. I did struggle a bit with video, but I usually got the job done. I never did consider having a camera that couldn't do video. I definitely consider myself to be a hybrid shooter. I don't absolutely have to have a mirrorless camera to do video. The Nikon D90 was doing 720p back in the day, and it looked fabulous.
It's a very cinematic look with that 24 frames a second.
I would at least like to have 1080. For some reason, I've been chasing after 4K 120 frames per second for the longest time. Filming in higher frame rates to get slow motion squirrel footage has become so important to me. I learned the magic of slow motion from watching Casey from Camera Conspiraciies.
I'm always shocked and perplexed when I get comments like, "Why do you need slow motion? You're the only one." Like, are you new to Earth? Things move at a normal speed that our eyes see, and then if you slow it down, everything is cooler. Every single thing, like the magic, can only be had in slow motion. It's one of the only things that I produce that actually gives me chills and gives me just this sense of purpose when I capture some kind of moment and it's super slow, and then I make music and put it to it, and somehow it fits together, and I'm just like, wow, that's the best, man. Why aren't I doing this all day long?
I have gotten somewhat better about being obsessed with having the highest video specs. At one point, I thought I really needed 10-bit color and to shoot everything in 4K. But then I encountered the Marcus Pix channel and I realized I really don't need all of those specs.
Most of these guys that are so obsessed thinking that their stuff is only going to look good if they shoot 10-bit and 422, and it's got to be 4K, 8K, 12K, 200 megabytes per second. Oh, like that's going to make your stuff good. If you actually think that's what's going to make your stuff great, as opposed to an artist who pours his heart out and has emotion and feeling. Look at the movies out there. $300 million movies, major special effects, and you walk out of there feeling empty, like there was nothing that made you feel like that was worth anything. And then there's movies out there that are shot on crappy cameras. They're half out of focus, they're grainy, they look terrible, they sound terrible, but yet you're just feel for it so much. A lot of these movies from the 70s, if you look at them compared to stuff we have now, they had stories. there was something there, you know, that these modern glitzy, fancy things just don't have. And that's good storytelling. That's good emotion. Like something that you feel for.
Trying to figure out my grandfather's low-tech camera from the 1970s has really made me appreciate some of the technology I do have, but it's also made me realize that I can do so much more with what I already have, instead of trying to chase down every new spec that comes to market. I could actually be quite happy with a downgrade. If you like this video, give it a like, consider subscribing for more camera-related content from a newbie like me. God bless.